You ever have one of those neighbors who just has to control everything? Well, that's Karen for you, the self-appointed queen of our HOA. She didn't just love rules, she worshipped them. Every week, she'd send out another email about community standards or fine someone for leaving their trash bin out 2 minutes too long. But one day, she decided to make me her next target. And that's where she went too far. It all started on a humid Friday morning. I was running late for work and drove up to the HOA's front gate, the only way in or out of our neighborhood. But something was off. The gate, which usually opened automatically, was chained shut, not just locked electronically. Karen had added a padlock and heavy chain. My heart sank when I saw a laminated note taped right to the gate. Access suspended pending HOA review. Signed, Karen, HOA president. I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe the system glitched. But then I spotted Karen standing across the street in her oversized sun hat, arms crossed, grinning like she'd just won a war. I rolled down my window and shouted, "What's this about, Karen?" She smirked and said, "You didn't get approval for that shed you built. Until it's removed, you're not using our gate." Our gate? That line hit a nerve. I paid my dues like everyone else. My property, my money. But apparently she thought she owned the place. I called the HOA office, but surprise, she was the one who answered the phone. "File a complaint if you want," she said, her voice dripping with fake politeness. "The board will review it next month." I sat there for a minute, fuming. I had things to do, places to be, and no one, especially not Karen, was going to trap me on my own property. That's when the idea hit me. Something big. Something she'd never forget. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to take matters into my own hands, literally, because if Karen wanted to lock me in, I was about to show her what breaking out really looked like. I didn't own heavy equipment. I'd never driven a bobcat, much less a monster of an excavator. But I did have stubbornness, a driver's license, and a savings account that felt like war chest money. The plan had to be bold, theatrical, and irreversible, because Karen was the sort of person who only respected actions. Step 1. Rent the equipment. I called every heavy equipment rental place within 50 miles. Half laughed at me. A couple offered safety tips. One direct company asked, "Are you moving earth or making a point?" I said, "Both." They reserved a medium excavator for weekend under a fake business name. I didn't want paperwork tracing back to me if the HOA turned this into a legal mess. Step 2. The logistics. Excavators aren't subtle. They need a trailer, a truck, permits, and a way to get in and out without causing a media circus. Yet loud enough that Karen would notice. I arranged for a flatbed with a driver to drop the machine a block away at dawn, where the service road met a back alley. I mapped routes, measured clearances, and packed gloves, safety glasses, a hard hat, and a thermos of office coffee. It felt like planning a heist in a suburban town. Step 3. Practice. The rental place offered a 2-hour orientation. I took it like a kid practicing with a toy I shouldn't have. The instructor showed me how to move the arm, swing the cab, and breathe like a calm person when metal creaked. I practiced loading and unloading simulated dirt piles until my hands ached, and my confidence grew. Step 4. Allies. I couldn't do this alone, legally or psychologically. I texted 3 friends, Marcus, Lena, and old Pete from down the lane who always had a grumble for Karen. Marcus brought sandwiches. Lena handled filming. Pete drove the rig into position and told offlookers to keep clear. We agreed on signals, a legal fallback, and a single rule: don't escalate physically. The plan would be loud and undeniable, but non-violent. Step 5. Timing. Saturday at dawn, when most of the neighborhood slept, and Karen's morning. Coffee ritual hadn't begun. We would show up, make our point, and leave if necessary. There was a chance Karen would call the police. There was a chance the HOA would lawyer up. There was also a chance she'd back down when everyone saw her. Overreach exposed in daylight. I felt a curious mix of guilt and glee. We were about to turn a petty, bureaucratic power move into a spectacle the HOA couldn't ignore. If this worked, it would be satisfying. If it failed, it would be expensive and messy. Either way, it would be unforgettable. We arrived before sunrise, the sky still a bruise of purple. The flatbed eased into the alley with the caution of a ship. Marcus kept the truck's lights low while Pete and I unshackled the excavator. Lena set up cameras, front porch, side street, a drone hovering, because if this would be a story, it needed witnesses. Karen's house was a tidy wedge of authority. Her porch light flicked on as if on cue. I imagined her in slippers, hair wrapped in that towel she wore like armor. A neighbor across the street, who'd watched the gate drama earlier, wandered over in his robe, coffee in hand. News spread quickly. By the time we finished lowering the machine, a small crowd had gathered, murmuring and taking photos. I climbed into the excavator with a mix of adrenaline and fear. The cab smelled of diesel and old radio static. Pete stood at my side like a nervous co-pilot. "You sure?" he mouthed. I nodded. Lena gave the thumbs up from the sidewalk, and the drone chirped alive. My first move was symbolic. A gentle nudge of the bucket into the gravel beside the gate, sending a spray of pebbles. Karen appeared at the gate, hands on her hips. "You can't do that! Call the police!" she shrieked, the way someone calls for reinforcements when losing ground. We had anticipated police. Marcus had texted a local legal aid. We were staging a protest against unlawful gate closure. When the squad car arrived, it was followed by another. Officers came calm, assessing. I explained plainly that the gate had been chained shut by the HOA president without due process, that residents were being denied access, and that we were prepared to remove an illegal obstruction. The officers radioed back and then asked Karen for the HOA paperwork. Her smile faltered. She rummaged through a stack of envelopes and produced a typed notice with a signature that looked like a Sharpie flourish. The officers squinted, exchanged looks, and asked for a moment. While they debated, I eased the excavator closer. The machine moved with the strange grace of something unwieldy made obedient. The bucket hooked the chain, strained, and the metal groaned. A collective intake of breath rippled through the crowd. Then something unexpected happened. One officer walked over, tapped the chain, and after a quiet conversation with Karen, nodded toward me. "Remove it," she said, voice neutral. We hauled the chain free. The gate swung open on squeaky hinges like a mouth finally speaking. The crowd erupted into cheers and camera shutters. Neighbors patted my back while Karen stood frozen, lipstick smudged, her authority crumbling as people took pictures of the open gate and celebrated their regained access and muttered under breath. By mid-morning, our sleepy cul-de-sac had turned into a full-blown news event. The sound of the excavator, the cheers, the flashing phones, it all painted a picture no HOA press release could undo. Within an hour, half the neighborhood was outside. Kids rode bikes past the now open gate like they were reclaiming freedom. Dogs barked, people laughed, and everyone seemed to forget how early it was. Everyone except Karen. Karen was pacing near her mailbox, still clutching her clipboard like it was a legal document. Her jaw was set, eyes burning holes through me. I knew what was coming before she even opened her mouth. "You're finished, you know that?" she hissed. "Vandalism, property damage. I'll have you in court before the day's over." I didn't flinch. "You locked me in my own property, Karen. I just unlocked it." The officers were still there, calmly documenting statements. One of them, Officer Daniels, turned to Karen and asked for proof of authorization for that chain and lock. Karen waved papers like confetti. "It's all here," she said. Daniels flipped through them, unimpressed. "Ma'am, none of these documents show board approval or a vote," he replied. "Looks like you acted on your own." That was the first crack in her armor. The crowd went silent for a beat and then someone clapped. Another followed. Soon the whole street was applauding. Karen's face turned crimson as she stormed back toward her house. Lena caught every moment on camera. By lunchtime, the footage was online, trimmed, captioned, and set to dramatic music. Within hours, it was all over local Facebook groups. The title, "Show Karen Locks Resident In, Gets Excavated." The comments poured in fast. People cheered. Some offered free legal advice. Others just said, "Finally, someone stood up to an HOA tyrant." Even our neighboring communities started sharing it. Overnight, our small HOA became internet famous for all the wrong reasons. By the next morning, a formal email from the board of directors went out, and it wasn't written by Karen. They announced an emergency meeting to address leadership misconduct and community relations. Translation: Karen was in trouble. When I showed up to that meeting, the same people who once whispered about keeping peace now spoke openly. Karen sat at the head of the table, pale and furious, as one of the board members read a motion to suspend her, indefinitely pending investigation. The vote was unanimous. Karen had finally lost control. And me? I was just happy to drive through that gate again. Wide open. No chains, no padlock, just freedom. But little did I know, Karen wasn't done yet. She had one last move left to play, one that would push things further than I ever expected. For a brief, glorious week, peace returned to the neighborhood. No emails, no surprise fines, no laminated warnings taped to doors. The gate stayed open, the excavator was returned, and my phone stopped buzzing, except for the constant flood of notifications from the viral video. People loved the story. Some called me a hero, others called me reckless. I didn't care. For the first time, life in the HOA felt normal. But normal doesn't last long when Karen's involved. It started small, missing mail, trash bins tipped over, and one morning, My new shed mysteriously vandalized with a red spray-painted message. Rule breaker. I knew that handwriting anywhere. She was furious, humiliated, and looking for revenge. Then came the letter. A thick, cream-colored envelope with no return address but unmistakable handwriting. Inside was a copy of a lawsuit. Karen had actually filed a civil claim for destruction of HOA property and public defamation. She was suing me. I should have been angry, but honestly, I laughed, because attached to the court filing were screenshots from my viral video. She'd downloaded the footage as evidence, not realizing it also captured her locking the gate and declaring, "You're not allowed to use our road." The very proof she thought would help her ended up exposing her again. My lawyer, a friend of Marcus, took one look and said, "This is open and shut. You'll win, and she'll pay for filing it." So I let the legal process roll. The day of court came. Small claims, local courtroom, maybe 20 people inside, but it felt bigger. Karen strutted in wearing a sharp suit, trying to look composed. I just sat quietly, calm. When the judge asked her to explain, she launched into a dramatic speech about community integrity and rogue residents. But then my lawyer pressed play on the video. There she was on the big screen, voice echoing through the courtroom. "Until that shed is gone. You're not using our gate." The judge leaned back, unimpressed. "Ma'am," he said, "this clearly shows you acted without board approval and unlawfully restricted access to private property. This case is dismissed." You could hear a pin drop. Karen didn't move. She just stood there, color draining from her face. The judge added, "I suggest you focus on cooperation instead of control." That was the last time Karen ever tried to cross me. Within a month, she quietly sold her house and moved out of the neighborhood. The gate's still open, the shed's still standing, and sometimes when I drive through, I can't help but smile. Because no HOA rulebook can ever outmatch common sense or a well-timed excavator.